Monique Harris stepped off the moving walkway and into the hum of the airport terminal. She moved with easy confidence, her posture calm yet purposeful. Every morning she arrived before sunrise at Horizon Wings headquarters. Today she was simply a passenger, blending into the crowd as she made her way to Gate 14 for a quick trip to Chicago. The bright overhead lights bounced off the shiny tile floor, and the murmur of voices mixed with the distant roar of arriving and departing jets. Monique took a deep breath, enjoying the familiar energy of the airport. She carried a black rolling suitcase, well worn from years of travel. Her carry-on bag was slung over one shoulder, light but full of essentials. A laptop, a journal, a paperback novel. She'd packed carefully the night before, knowing she had meetings with investors and wanted time to prepare on the plane. Even though she owned the airline, she still cherished moments alone with her thoughts. Behind the check-in counter, a young gate agent named Tyler Jacobs adjusted his name badge. This was his first busy morning on his own. He had trained under more experienced colleagues, but the rush of travelers that day stretched his confidence. Hovering above his crisp uniform was a look of determination, mixed with a trace of nervousness. Tyler tapped his computer screen, scanning boarding passes and gestures at passengers to move forward. When Monique reached the front of the line, Tyler glanced up without a greeting. He barely noticed her at first, focusing on the scanner's red beam. Monique smiled politely and offered her boarding pass. Tyler scanned it once, then twice. Time. The machine emitted a low, repetitive beep that sounded more like an error than approval. "The lock here isn't scanning," Tyler said, his voice tense. He nodded toward her suitcase. "Mind if I open that for you? We need to make sure nothing prohibited is getting on board." Monique's eyebrows lifted gently. She had expected a routine check, perhaps a quick glance at her belt or shoes. An announcement said liquids must be under 3.4 ounces. Random bag searches were rare at the gate. Still, she held no objection to following protocol. "Of course," she said, pulling out the keychain of small keys. She unclasped the lock and offered it to Tyler. "Here you go. Please feel free to unlock it yourself." Tyler shook his head and reached across. No, I can do it." His tone was brusque. Monique noticed a group of passengers behind her beginning to shuffle with impatience. Some glared, others tapped their phones. Time was tight. Tyler undid the combination lock and yanked the zipper. The suitcase burst open. A soft cascade of neatly folded clothes, a shawl, and a small potted succulent tumbled onto the floor. The lid sprang open farther than intended, causing her belongings to spill free. For a moment everything froze. White linen dress lay half. On the tile, the succulent pot teetered on a stack of socks, and a pair of leather gloves dangled from the open compartment. Nearby, a toddler let out a tentative laugh and a mother hurried him along. Monique took a small step forward, kneeling down to gather her things. Tyler stood back, looking as if the suitcase had exploded on its own. He opened his mouth to speak, then thought better of it and closed it again. "Okay." Monique picked up the dress, smoothing it gently on her arm. She kept her voice even as she addressed him. "I'm sorry for the delay. I'll repack these now." Tyler nodded, awkwardly stepping aside. "It's fine," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. He handed her back items as she asked for them one by one. The journal, the paperback, the laptop. She placed them carefully back in their places. Her movements were precise, as though she had performed this ritual countless times. Passengers around her shifted, some whispering to one another about the incident. A tall man in a business suit surveyed the scene with mild amusement. "Everything okay?" he asked, raising an eyebrow at Tyler. The gate agent offered a tight smile. "Good now," he said. Monique finished repacking her suitcase and zipped it up carefully, making sure nothing would fall out again. She stood and straightened her jacket. "Thank you," she said to Tyler with a nod, then turned to face the boarding ramp. As she stepped toward the jet bridge, Monique felt a gentle tug at her elbow. She turned back to see Tyler's supervisor. A woman with silver hair pulled into a neat bun. The supervisor motioned Tyler aside, her expression serious. Monique watched as he leaned in, ears tilted, lips moving silently. She continued on her way, curiosity trailing behind her. At the head of the jet bridge, Monique paused and checked her watch. She had 15 minutes before takeoff. She tilted her head, observing rows of seats inside the plane through the open door. Flight attendants greeted her with smiles and directed her to first class. Monique walked down the aisle, smiling at fellow passengers as she passed. A young couple holding hands, a family with 2 restless children, an older man reading the newspaper. She settled into her seat and placed her suitcase in the overhead bin. The flight attendant handed her a bottle of water and asked if she needed anything else. "I'm good, thank you," Monique replied softly. She pulled out her laptop and opened it, the screen lighting up with the familiar Horizon Wings dashboard. Even on her own airline flights, Monique liked to glance at real-time data. She scanned the departure gates, on-time performance stats, and crew schedules. Everything looked smooth, except for a small alert at Gate 14. A note said Gate Agent Delay. Passenger Confrontation. Her lips curved into a gentle smile. She recognized her own flight number. She closed the laptop and leaned back, letting the hum of the engines wash over her. Meanwhile, back at the gate, Tyler's supervisor spoke firmly. "He tore her bag open," she said quietly, shaking her head. Tyler looked contrite, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "I just wanted to keep things moving," the supervisor sighed. "We should have handled that with more courtesy. She's not just any passenger." Tyler blinked. "What do you mean?" Up in the plane, Monique sat with her eyes closed for a moment, remembering how often she had ridden commercial flights long before she founded Horizon Wings. How she had faced long lines, rude staff, lost luggage, and delays. Many times, she had wished airlines cared more about people than profit margins. Now, as she felt the gentle rumble of the engines run down, she thought about the day ahead, meetings, presentations, new strategies for improving customer experience. Monique opened her eyes and looked out the window at the tarmac. Ground crew guided another plane into position. She thought about Tyler. He was young, probably eager to prove himself. He had acted out of pressure and inexperience. It was a small mistake, but it revealed something about the culture at the gate. How many travelers felt the same frustration and helplessness when their bags were treated like obstacles to efficiency? She tapped her fingers on the armrest, thinking of ways to fix it. The flight attendant closed the cabin door and announced that boarding was complete. The co-pilot called out over the intercom, "Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be underway shortly." Monique stowed her laptop and lifted her bag to place it in the overhead bin. She practiced a small, polite smile whenever the crew passed by. Tyler watched the plane's departure from the gate monitor, saw Flight 37 moving away. He pressed his hand to his chest, as if to steady a faint ache of guilt. "What?" he whispered. "I'm sorry," but the apology was to himself. He turned to resume scanning, determined to be more careful for the rest of the morning. Up in the sky, Monique closed her eyes again. She thought of the meetings in Chicago, of the investors who still saw her as an underdog because she was a black woman. In charge of an airline, she thought of the hours she spent building the company from scratch, negotiating gates, hiring staff, designing training programs. She thought of her mother, who always believed in her. She thought of countless passengers who trusted her with their journeys. Monique let herself drift into a brief rest, feeling the steady pulse of the plane. She knew that later today, she would take action to prevent others from experiencing what she had felt at Gate 14. But for now, she would enjoy the rare luxury of being a passenger. Tucked into the quiet of first class, carrying her own story forward at 30,000 feet, ChatGPT said. Monique woke as the cabin lights brightened. Outside the window, the sky had taken on a soft golden glow. The plane began its slow descent into Chicago. Her mind stirred with purpose. She thought of the unfinished work waiting for her: meetings, presentations, conversations about the future of Horizon Wings. She reached for her notebook and started writing ideas to improve passenger experience, especially at busy gates like the one she had passed through only hours ago. When the plane touched down, a gentle rumble ran through the cabin. Passengers clapped softly, and the flight attendant smiled as she zipped the service cart's cover. Monique slipped her notebook back into her bag and checked her phone. There was a flurry of messages, some about the meeting schedule, others congratulating her for a smooth flight. One message from her public relations manager stood out. Social media is buzzing about Gate 14 incident. Should we address it? Monique paused and thought about her next move. She tapped out a brief reply. Let's wait until I'm back at the office. I want to understand everything first. The doors opened and passengers poured into the jet bridge. Monique gathered her things, offering a nod to the flight attendant. She walked down the aisle, her steps measured. As she approached the exit, she noticed several people pulling out their phones, fingers flying over screens. Some glanced her way, curiosity in their eyes. She recognized that moment well. Sometimes cameras catch her in the wild unaware. She gave a polite smile and stepped onto the hard floor of the terminal. The Chicago airport was busy in the morning light. Families hugged goodbye. Business travelers hurried toward taxis, and cleaning crews moved through the gates. Monique walked past the disembarking crowd and toward the elevator banks. She pressed the button for ground transportation, pulling her suitcase behind her. She felt a familiar pull in her chest, the weight of responsibility and the desire to do more. In the terminal, a small group had gathered near Gate 14. Tyler stood there too, hands clasped behind his back, watching flights come and go. When he saw Monique, he hesitated, then stepped forward. She noticed him out of the corner of her eye. He approached slowly, his face lined with remorse. Monique paused, watching him. As he reached her, he swallowed hard. "Miss Harris," he said, voice low. He stopped, his eyes dropping to the floor. "I'm sorry." His apology seemed too small for what had happened. Monique let a moment pass, letting him gather courage. He looked up. His eyes were red around the edges, as though he had been holding back tears. "I shouldn't have opened your bag like that. I was more concerned about the line and my own mistake than about you as a person." "I'm sorry," Monique studied him. In that quiet moment, she saw a young man who wanted to do well, but had failed to see the person in front of him. She thought of her own beginnings, how she had learned to lead with compassion after hard lessons. "Thank you for apologizing," she said softly. "I know it was a busy morning, but every passenger deserves respect." She paused and looked past him at the throng of travelers. I want you to remember that." Tyler nodded, relief and shame mingling on his face. "I will," he said. He hesitated again. "Is there any way I can fix this?" Monique considered. "Yes, be kind. Do your job well, and treat people as you'd wish to be treated yourself." She gave him a small, encouraging smile and turned to leave. Tyler watched her go, determined to change. Outside the terminal, Monique stepped into a waiting car. Driver greeted her by name, and she climbed in. As the vehicle pulled away, she looked back at the airport entrance, thinking about what had happened. She took a deep breath. Today would be about more than business. It would be about culture and change. At the conference center where her meetings were held, the first session was already underway. Investors sat around a long table, their expressions attentive. When Monique entered, they rose to greet her. She offered warm handshakes and took her seat at the head of the table. A screen behind her displayed the Horizon Wings logo and the words "Innovation" and "Customer Care." She clicked a remote, and slides appeared showing charts of passenger satisfaction, revenue, and fleet growth. She began her presentation with grace and authority. She spoke about the airline's mission: to connect people with warmth, dignity, and excellence. She described new training programs, updated lounges, and a digital app that would allow passengers to track their bags in real time. She laid out ambitious plans for expanding routes and improving on-ground service. The investors listened and asked questions about costs, timelines, and market risks. Monique answered each one, her voice steady, her passion clear. As the meeting closed, one investor rose. "Your vision is inspiring," he said, "but I heard about the incident at Gate 14 this morning. How will you ensure that such mistakes don't undermine your brand promise?" Monique paused. This was exactly the question she had been preparing to address. She smiled. I appreciate the concern. Today I spoke to the gate agent involved and accepted his apology. But this incident shows me where we need to do better. Later this week, we will launch a new customer service initiative. We'll train every team member to see each passenger as a person first. We'll set up metrics not just for speed, but for courtesy and empathy. We'll make sure our core value respect is measured in every interaction. The investors nodded, impressed by her candor and focus. They agreed to increase their support. The room buzzed with optimism as they shook her hand again on the way out. Monique gathered her notes, feeling the energy of progress. Back at her hotel, Monique reviewed social media mentions on her phone. Headlines ranged from outraged to supportive. Some called for a boycott. Others praised her humility. She read the comments, both polite and harsh. She knew social media could be a powerful tool for change, or a source of pain. She tapped out a post. Today I learned that even in a company built on care, mistakes happen. I'm committed to making sure every Horizon Wings passenger feels seen and respected. Change starts now. She hit send. Her post quickly gained likes and shares. Passengers she had never met thanked her for listening. Some shared stories of their own travel frustrations. Monique read a comment from a teacher who said her students spoke about this story in class. A young woman thanked her for standing up for respect. Monique smiled as she set the phone aside. That evening, she sat in a quiet corner of the hotel lounge, sipping herbal tea. She reflected on the day's lessons. The power of apology, the courage it takes to admit a mistake, and the importance of turning pain into progress. She pulled out her journal and wrote a note. Tomorrow, meet with training team. Introduce new empathy exercises. Visit the hub and observe gate checks. Show Tyler and the team they're supported. She closed the journal and let her thoughts settle. The next morning, Monique returned to the airport, this time as a visitor to the training center at Horizon Wings Chicago hub. She walked through a corridor decorated with photos of staff helping passengers of all ages and backgrounds. She entered a classroom where new employees practiced greeting passengers with warmth. She watched as trainers guided them through role play. One person pretended to be in a hurry. Another acted confused. The trainees learned to speak calmly, offer assistance, and listen. Monique joined them, introducing herself simply as the founder. She told the story of Gate 14, leaving out no details. She described how she felt, how Tyler felt, and what she hoped would change. The trainees listened in rapt silence. Spoke, a young woman asked, "How do we know when we show enough respect?" Monique replied, "When the passenger knows you see them as a person, not just a bag or a number. Ask yourself, would I like to be treated this way?" The room filled with nods. That afternoon, Monique met with Tyler and a small group of gate agents. They sat around a table with coffee and donuts. She thanked him for owning his mistake and praised his apology. She asked each person to share a mistake they had made and what they learned.
Atmosphere
Shifted from formal to open. Agents spoke about long hours, tough days, and the pressure to keep lines moving. Monique listened empathetically and offered ways to support them. More breaks, mentoring, and a direct line to raise concerns. At the end of the session, Monique handed each agent a card. On one side was the phrase, "Every person matters." On the other, a prompt, "Today, I will treat every passenger with empathy." She asked them to carry the card and refer to it when they felt stressed. The agents accepted the cards with genuine smiles. As the day ended, Monique walked across the tarmac under a setting sun. Planes stood silent, engines cooling. She thought, of all the journeys that would happen tomorrow and beyond, she knew culture change took time, but she felt hopeful. She had turned a wrong into an opportunity to teach, to inspire, and to grow stronger. Ahead of her was a flight home where she could rest. But in her heart, she carried the lesson of Gate 14 like a compass, guiding every step she would take as the leader of Horizon Wings. Monique boarded her flight back to headquarters, feeling a gentle sense of accomplishment. The cabin was quiet, with most passengers settled into their seats. She found her aisle seat, placed her bag overhead, and smiled at the flight attendant. "Thank you for your work today," she said softly. The attendant returned the smile and offered a bottle of water. Monique accepted and settled in, opening her journal to jot down the day's lessons. As the plane taxied, Monique watched the runway lights glide by outside the window. She thought about Tyler and the training session, how a simple apology had helped him understand respect in a new way, how a small classroom of gate agents had opened their hearts when shown that empathy mattered. She felt the hum of engines beneath her and closed her eyes for a moment. Breathing deeply, she used her phone to check the updates from social media. The post she had shared about respect was still gaining traction. Passengers praised the airline's new program. Some shared their own stories of kindness or regret during travel. Monique felt both humble and hopeful. She typed a brief reply to one comment. "Thank you for sharing. Your story matters too." Then she set the phone aside. A few rows back, Monique noticed a woman struggling with a stroller and two small children. The woman's expression was tired and tense as she tried to fold the stroller under the seat. Monique slipped out of her. Sita knelt beside her. "May I help?" she asked. The mother looked up in surprise. "Oh, yes, thank you." Together, they worked to collapse the stroller and stow it securely. The children peered out, curious, and Monique smiled at them. "Welcome aboard," she said warmly. The mother thanked her, relief showing in her eyes. Monique returned to her seat with a light heart, knowing that small acts of help made a real difference. The flight attendant passed by and saw Monique. "You're very kind," she said. Monique nodded. "We all have moments when we need a hand." The attendant paused and added, "I'll share this with my team." Monique smiled and thanked her as the plane reached cruising altitude. Monique opened her laptop and reviewed the new training modules her team had prepared. One module taught agents how to greet passengers with a real smile and use their names, if possible. Another focused on listening carefully to concerns before reacting. She scrolled through sample dialogue and real scenarios. She paused at a slide showing a comparison between quick bag checks and respectful bag checks. She made a note, "Add more real examples." Then she closed the laptop and leaned back, letting the gentle vibration of the cabin soothe her. Soon, the pilot's voice came over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are starting our descent into home base. Please fasten your seatbelts and prepare for landing." Monique clicked her seatbelt securely and looked out at the clouds drifting by. She thought ahead to the work waiting on the ground, finalizing the empathy cards, scheduling follow-up visits to gates, meeting with her marketing team to share the positive news. She felt energized rather than tired. When the plane landed smoothly, passengers applauded. Monique stood, gathered her belongings, and offered thanks to the flight attendants as she passed by. She walked down the jet bridge, stepping into the familiar terminal where her journey had begun. She waved to a custodian polishing the floor and greeted security staff with a nod. She felt at ease here. This place held both the memory of her suitcase spilling and the start of a new path forward in the corridor outside the gates. Her assistant Marcus met her with a tablet and a warm grin. "Welcome home," he said. Monique smiled in return. "Thank you, Marcus. How did the morning go?" He tapped the screen. Passengers rated the flight service at 4.9 out of 5. They especially praised the personal help you gave. And here, he pointed to a chart, we have data on gate interactions since the training started. The positive comments doubled. Monique let out a small laugh of joy. "That's wonderful," she said. They stepped into a boardroom where the training team waited. Monique greeted each person by name and sat at the center of the table. She asked for brief reports on the empathy program's first week. One trainer spoke about role-play success. Agents felt more confident acting with warmth. Another showed screenshots of positive passenger messages shared on social media. Marcus added that even ground staff outside security checkpoints were asking for the empathy cards. Monique listened, taking careful notes. After the updates, Monique stood. "I'm proud of what we've achieved so far," she said in clear, simple words, "but we must keep building. Today I want to discuss how to bring this program to every airport we serve." She pointed to a map on the wall that showed all Horizon wings, hubs, We'll start with our 5 busiest airports and then roll out region by region. We need trainers on site, digital reminders at each counter, and regular feedback loops from passengers. She outlined her plan. Surveys sent by text message after each flight, mystery shoppers to check for respectful behavior, monthly meetings with local staff. The team nodded in agreement and added ideas of their own. Once the planning session ended, Monique stayed behind to speak one-on-one with the training coordinator. They discussed budget, materials, and schedules. The coordinator suggested printing the empathy cards on recycled paper and including them in the ID badge holders. Monique approved and asked for a draft. She then met with the app developers to integrate a feature that allowed passengers to rate not just the flight, but each interaction, checking in, security, boarding, baggage claim. She emphasized that simplicity was key. 1 or 2 taps to give feedback. The developers promised a prototype in 2 weeks. By late afternoon, Monique had covered calls, planning, and site visits. She decided to visit the nearby baggage handling area to see if the new lessons extended beyond the gate. She put on her safety vest and helmet security had arranged a quick tour. A supervisor led her through a row of conveyor belts and sorting machines. Workers scanned tags and loaded bags onto carts. She stopped at one station where a young handler was carefully lifting suitcases. The handler recognized her and paused. "Ms. Harris," he said respectfully. He showed her a new checklist they had prepared, with a section reminding them to handle bags gently and greet passengers after they picked them up. Monique examined it and offered a few tweaks, add a line about apologizing if a bag was delayed. The handler thanked her and returned to his work with a smile. Monique left the baggage area and walked toward the parking garage. She thought about how respect and empathy could flow through every part of the journey. She paused by a row of rental car shuttles, picking up passengers. She waved at the drivers and received friendly honks in reply. She felt a lightness in her. A belief that actions born of care could ripple outward. At home that evening, Monique unpacked her suitcase alone. She folded each piece of clothing carefully, savoring the simple routine. She placed her journal on the bedside table, where the empathy cards lay beside it. She ran a finger over the words, "Every person matters." Then she sat on the edge of her bed and reflected on the day's successes and challenges. She thought of Tyler, working hard at Gate 14 to protect that phrase in every decision. Of the mother she had helped on the flight, of the training team eager to spread kindness. Of baggage handlers who took pride in gentle care. She closed her eyes for a moment and imagined all the passengers who would travel with Horizon Wings tomorrow. People going home for holidays, parents taking their children on first trips, workers seeking new opportunities. She saw their faces, their hopes, their fears. She felt a quiet responsibility to make each of their journeys better. Monique lay down and drifted to sleep, her mind filled with plans and possibilities. She knew change was a journey, not a single flight. But with every gate, every flight, every connection she helped shape, Horizon Wings would carry more than people. They would carry respect, empathy, and care. And that made all the difference in the world. Monique arrived at the airline's annual leadership retreat feeling a mix of anticipation and determination. The conference hall buzzed with conversation as department heads, regional managers, and senior staff gathered around small tables. Everyone had a name badge and a mug of coffee. Banners on the walls read Horizon Wings, soaring with respect, and every person matters. Monique took a seat at the center table. She looked across at faces she knew well, people who had helped build the company, and at some new leaders she was meeting for the first time. A trainer from her new empathy program stood to welcome everyone. "Thank you all for joining," the trainer began. "Today we celebrate our progress and look ahead to deeper change." She invited Monique to speak. Monique stood, cleared her throat, and scanned the room. She thought of Tyler, the gate agent, who had sparked this journey, of every passenger whose day a small act of care could brighten. "I want to share a story," Monique said. She told the group about Gate 14 and the ripped-open suitcase. She described how she had felt embarrassed and powerless, how Tyler's apology had led to the empathy training they were now living. Heads nodded as people recognized the power of the moment. That incident reminded me why we exist, Monique continued. We connect people safely, yes, but we also treat them with dignity. That is our true mission. After her talk, Monique broke into small discussion groups. Each group had a facilitator and a set of questions printed on cards. What does respect look like in your role? How can you show empathy when you're busy? When have you felt unseen? Participants shared personal stories of a customer who felt ignored, of a coworker who offered help in a stressful moment, a request for water that turned into a heartwarming connection. Monique moved between tables, listening and encouraging, occasionally jotting notes on a small tablet at one table. A baggage claim supervisor named Javier described a recent day when a family's luggage went missing. He explained how he stayed late to deliver the bags to their hotel, surprising and delighting them. He said, "I saw relief on their faces. That's why I love this job." People smiled and clapped softly. Monique nodded, then asked, "How can we make this easier for you? What support do you need?" Javier thought for a moment and suggested better communication tools between baggage handlers and customer service. Monique marked it on her tablet for follow-up. Midway through the afternoon, the trainer led everyone in a role-play exercise. 2 volunteers acted out a gate check scenario, one as a rush traveler with a broken lock, the other as an agent under time pressure. The rest of the group watched and then offered feedback. Monique observed as the agent used gentle words and a warm tone, slowing down to explain the process. The traveler relaxed and smiled in return. "This is the kind of moment I wanted every gate," Monique said when the scene ended. After the break, Monique called for a technology update. Her head of IT demonstrated a new feature in the passenger app, a kindness corner, where travelers could thank specific staff by name and share stories. These comments would go directly to the employee and to a public feed, encouraging a culture of recognition. The room brightened as people saw the idea come to life. Monique asked when the feature could launch company-wide. The IT lead replied, "In 4 weeks after testing." Monique approved the timeline and asked for regular progress updates. As the day wound down, Monique invited everyone to write a personal pledge on a large poster at the front of the room. The poster read, "I pledge to make every journey kind," and beside it was a tray of colorful markers. Staff lined up to write, "I pledge to greet every passenger with a smile. I pledge to listen before I act. I pledge to help without being asked." Monique added her own pledge. "I pledge to lead with empathy and to learn from mistakes." She stood back and looked at the sea of promises. Before closing, Monique surprised the team with a recognition ceremony. Handed out small awards, handcrafted wooden tokens engraved with the words Horizon Wings Heart to employees nominated by customers. Tyler was among those recognized. Monique watched as he received his token with a shy smile, surprised and proud. She called him forward and said, "Thank you for learning and for reminding us all that respect starts with a heart." The room burst into applause. Later that evening, Monique slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking a garden. Strings of lights twinkled in the trees. She held her wooden token and turned it over in her hands. She thought of how far they had come from a torn suitcase to a movement of kindness that was spreading through the company. She felt the warm evening breeze and let herself relax for a moment. Her phone buzzed with a message from the mother she had helped on the flight. The mother's children had drawn pictures for Monique and asked her to deliver them to Horizon Wings headquarters. The mother attached a photo of the drawings, bright crayon sketches of an airplane and a smiling woman. Monique smiled. She replied, "Thank you, I'll cherish these." She looked at the token again, then tucked it into her pocket. The next morning, Monique visited the company's central office. In the lobby, a framed collection of the children's drawings hung next to the large poster of pledges. Employees passing by paused to look and smiled. Monique watched from the reception desk, feeling a surge of pride and hope. She greeted people, and they greeted her back with warmth. She then led a small press event. Local news outlets had heard about the empathy program's launch. Porters and cameras filled a conference room. Monique addressed the media with simple honesty. We believe that respect and empathy are as essential as safety in air travel. We've heard from our passengers and our staff are committed to making every journey a human one. She announced plans to share the program details online and to invite other airlines to join in. After her speech, she took questions about how companies could measure kindness and how passengers could participate. She answered each question clearly, avoiding jargon. Back in her office, Monique found a box on her desk. Inside were the original drawings from the children. She held up a picture of an airplane with rainbow smoke trailing behind it and taped it to the wall above her computer. She placed the wooden token on her desk beside the framed drawing. That afternoon, she received an email from a professor at a business school who wanted to study Horizon Wings as a case of compassionate leadership. Monique agreed to host students for a site visit next month. She thought of the impact they might have, how young leaders would learn that profit and care could go hand in hand. As the sun set, Monique walked through the empty office, lights low. She paused by the empathy card display small holders at each counter, ready to be refilled. She took one card in her hand and read the words, "Every person matters." She thought back to Tyler, to Javier, to the mother and her children. Felt the steady beat of progress. Monique turned off the lights and locked the office door behind her. Outside, the city lights twinkled. She climbed into her car and drove home, mind humming with ideas for deeper change. She knew the path ahead would have challenges, resistance, fatigue, old habits, but she felt ready. With each small act of kindness and every promise kept, Horizon Wings would continue to soar, carrying not just people but a culture of respect and care across the skies. Monique woke early the next morning, the soft glow of dawn seeping through her bedroom curtains. She sat on the edge of her bed and rubbed her eyes, feeling the gentle hum of excitement in her chest. Today was the day she would visit a small family whose flight had been delayed the week before. She wanted to see firsthand how the empathy training had changed real journeys. She dressed in simple clothes, a light blouse, and comfortable slacks and tied her hair back. She packed her notebook, a pen, and the stack of empathy cards she had printed for the family. In the car on the way to the airport, Monique thought about how a single act or ripped suitcase had sparked a ripple of kindness that reached far. Beyond Gate 14, she remembered Tyler's apology, the classroom role plays, the pledges on the poster, and the children's drawings taped to her office wall. She wondered what the family would say when they saw her standing at baggage claim. With a smile and a card, at the airport, she bypassed security by flashing her staff badge, nodding to the guard she had come to know well. She walked to the arrivals area and found the family, 3 people waiting by the carousel, looking tired but hopeful. A small boy held a stuffed toy, and his sister balanced a backpack bigger than herself. Their mother checked her watch and shifted from foot to foot. Monique approached quietly, holding out her hand in greeting. Monique said gently. The mother looked up, surprise and confusion flickering across her face. When she saw Monique's badge, her eyes widened. "Are you?" she asked. Monique knelt to be at their level and smiled. "I'm Monique Harris," she said. "I'm the founder of Horizon Wings. I heard about your delay last week and how you waited long for your bags." She held out the empathy card. "I'd like to thank you for your patience and to offer you this." The mother reached out and took the card, her eyes shining. The children peeked from behind her. The mother read the card aloud. "Every person matters." She turned it over and saw a blank side for her own note. With a trembling hand, she wrote, "Thank you for caring." The boy and girl each wrote their names in large, uneven letters. Monique placed the cards gently back in the family's hands. "You can keep these," she said. "Whenever you travel, remember that someone is looking out for you." The family smiled, and the mother hugged Monique. "This means so much," she whispered. Monique patted her arm and stood. "Enjoy your day," she said, then walked away with a light heart. Back at her office, Monique read the note the family had sent later that evening. A thank you email with photos of the children holding the cards and beaming at the camera. Monique printed the photos and added them to her empathy board alongside the drawings and pledges. She took a step back and admired the growing mosaic of human stories proof. that respect and care had real faces and real names. Later in the week, Monique held a Zoom call with regional managers across the country. The screen lit up with friendly faces in small boxes. She greeted each one by name and asked for quick updates on their local empathy programs. In Atlanta, the manager reported that customer feedback scores had improved by 15%. In Los Angeles, a team had launched a Kindness Champion Award for staff members nominated by passengers. In Denver, airport volunteers were handing out water bottles and empathy cards to arriving travelers during hot days. Nodded and praised their efforts. She took notes on ways to share best practices between regions. Next, she dialed into a live group chat with several Horizon Wings pilots. They met on a secure line, their faces framed by headsets and cockpit, windows behind them. One pilot described how he now greeted every passenger before takeoff with a microphone announcement that included thanks and a reminder to ask staff for help if they needed anything. Another pilot shared how he asked the cabin crew to tell him stories of kindness they had witnessed during the flight, which he shared with other pilots at the next briefing. Monique grinned at their creativity and thanked them for flying the kindness culture high in the sky. The following day, Monique attended a small ceremony at a local school. The business professor and his students had come to study Horizon Wings' empathy initiative. Students presented their findings in a simple, well-organized report. Showed how passenger satisfaction had increased, how employee morale was higher, and how social media sentiment had shifted from complaints to praise. They recommended that Monique write a short case study for other companies to learn from. Monique accepted their suggestion and promised to work on a paper that spotlighted the journey from a damaged suitcase to a company-wide culture of care. That evening, Monique hosted a dinner at her home. She invited several staff members who had shown outstanding kindness, a baggage handler who had stayed late to help a wheelchair-bound passenger, a flight attendant who had comforted a frightened elderly woman during turbulence in an airport, cleaner who had returned a lost wedding ring to a distraught passenger. They sat around her dining table, sharing stories as they sampled her homemade soup and fresh bread. Laughter bubbled up as each person recalled the gratitude they saw on travelers' faces. Monique raised a glass of sparkling water. "To you," she said. "You are the heart of Horizon Wings. Without your kindness, none of this would matter." The group clinked glasses and cheered softly. In the weeks that followed, Monique continued to weave empathy into every corner of the company. She added short training segments in the annual safety courses. She had posters designed with simple reminders: look up, make eye contact, ask, don't assume, say how can I help. Passenger stories in their monthly newsletter. She even recorded a brief video message filmed on a tarmac at sunset, speaking directly to passengers and staff. Travel can be stressful, but at Horizon Wings, you are seen and valued. One day, a young gate agent approached her in the lobby. He held a letter in his hand and looked nervous. Monique smiled and invited him to sit. The agent introduced himself as Carlos. He said he had been part of the first training class and had since helped reconcile dozens of passenger complaints. He handed her the letter, a typed note from a passenger, thanking Carlos for going above and beyond to find her lost medication. The passenger wrote that she had felt afraid and alone, but Carlos had listened and stayed calm until she had her medicine. Monique read the note and felt tears prick her eyes. She placed a hand on Carlos's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is why we do this." Carlos blushed and nodded, then offered her the chance to sign his letter so he could frame it. Monique signed it with care and handed it back. "I'm proud of you," she said. Carlos grinned and saluted playfully before heading back to his shift. Months later, Monique returned to Gate 14 once more. It was early morning, and the gate was quiet except for the hushed clatter of cleaning crew preparing for the day. Tyler was there, now a mentor for new agents. They saw Monique and waved. She walked over and they spoke about recent empathy workshops and new ideas for passenger surveys. Tyler showed her a small plaque on the counter that read in kindness, "We fly." Monique placed her hand on the plaque and smiled, remembering the day his rough action had led to such gentle change. As she turned to leave, Monique looked back at the gate agents greeting passengers. She saw real smiles, patient, hand gestures, and respectful nods. She felt a swell of pride and warmth. She thought of every person who had learned, grown, and shared kindness. She knew the path ahead would be long, and that habits could slip if they did not tend the culture daily. But she also knew that one person's apology and one leader's vision could lift hundreds more into better journeys. Walking away from Gate 14 for the last time that day, Monique breathed in the bright terminal air. She felt the quiet hum of life moving forward, families reunited, business trips begun, adventures launched. She felt the promise that every journey could be more than a flight. It could be an act of respect, a touch of empathy, a spark of human connection. And she carried that promise with her, ready to guide Horizon Wings and everyone it served into. Skies filled not just with planes, but with care and kindness at every altitude.